you have to know exactly what it is that you're doing. Once that learning curve has been overcome, then BIM becomes very intuitive and it starts to tell you what it is that it wants.
That's right, guys. BIM is not rocket science. That was a small snippet from today's episode with our guest, Rina Sahay, all the way from the United States, where she works as an architectural BIM manager at Fishbeck, Thompson, Carr, and Huber Inc. Architects. And you guessed it right, this is going to be a BIM-based episode. Rina is going to be sharing her career, starting off in India, where she finished a Bachelor of Architecture from Punjab University in 1982. So she's got almost 30 years of experience plus, and there was a lot of great insights in this episode. She shares her journey to the US, completing a master's, working for various firms, and also teaching, and eventually transitioning into CAD, Revit, and of course BIM. So there's a lot of great advice and a lot of great tips in this episode. Rina also shares her tips on those who want to migrate to the US and start working there. And we talk in depth about the various BIM standards, the processes, and what goes behind running a BIM project. We've written extensive show notes, like always, on our website, which is arcyan.com/43. And if you want to reach out to Rina, you can get in touch with her on her LinkedIn profile, which is also part of our show notes. Rina was a very fun and amiable guest to talk to. She had a lot to share. And she also takes us to her past, where she worked for BV Doshi and her time in India as well. So there's a lot to learn in this episode, and I hope it inspires you to get into the BIM space. Let's get right to it. This is Journey of a BIM Manager with Rina Sahay. Let's go.
About to enter the Arcyan Podcast. India's first and very own architecture podcast, where you'll hear the insights, experiences, and journeys from India's leading architects. No matter what your skill level is, together we'll build on our knowledge and share architecture's greatest stories ever told. Now, here's your host, Manish Paul Simon.
Let's jump right into it. Give us your background and how you transitioned from studying Bachelor of Architecture in India to now working as a BIM manager in the US.
That was quite a journey.
All right.
I got my bachelor's from Chandigarh College of Architecture, and that's definitely quite a breeding ground, for architects.
Right.
It's Corbu's Chandigarh. You're surrounded by architecture all the time. It's absolutely wonderful. In the mid-90s, I was introduced to AutoCAD.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had AutoCAD on their machine. It was release 12, and I fell in love with CAD right then. So in the late 90s, I came to the United States, got my master's from the University of Michigan, with a concentration on CAD. Every CAD course that there was, I took it.
Mm-hmm.
I started teaching college classes in CAD, and I've been teaching at a variety of different schools over the years.
All right.
In 2016, I returned from academia to industry as a BIM specialist, and now I am a BIM manager at a firm called Fishbeck in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We are one of the leading architectural firms, one of the leading AEC firms in the Midwest, and it's a real challenge. It's an interesting job. It's a challenge. I'm loving everything that happens every day.
Awesome. So you had a career that spans over 30 years, right?
Correct.
Awesome. So could you briefly tell us about how you got into architecture? Like, this was in the 80s, right? So could you briefly tell us about the journey then?
That it was an interesting journey. My parents wanted me to go into medicine.
Okay.
Indian parents, right?
Yeah.
The child has to be a doctor or engineer. So I wanted to go into journalism.
Mm-hmm.
But then I came to know about the College of Architecture. I was always interested in art. I went, interviewed, and suddenly the admission letter was in the mail. After that, as they say, the rest is history, and there was no looking back. 5 years in college, those were golden years of my life. We had a very good group, an excellent group of teachers. I learned a lot. I had a lot of good opportunities. In my 4th year internship, I interned with BV Doshi at
Oh,
Stein
wow.
Doshi and Bhalla.
Awesome.
Phenomenal experience. That was really, really wonderful.
And what is it back then like? Was it more of drafting? And yeah, of course it was more of drafting, but
Yes, it was drafting. It was drafting. And if you tear somebody's drawing, then it's a tragedy. I know I did that once.
okay.
I'm confessing to it now. But yes, I did tear somebody's double elephant sized vellum. That was
All right.
not very good. And those were the days, because they had to tape the vellum together to get the CD out.
And what do you mean by vellum and CD?
CDs, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm lapsing into the local verbiage, or construction documents.
Right.
And that would be the gateway tracing.
Right.
So yes, it was a gateway sheet, and I tripped and tore half of it, and it was almost a complete document. And it was very sad. But that doesn't happen nowadays. Nowadays, there's no paper to tear.
Yeah. And that was also in, I think maybe by the mid 90s also they made a transition towards the computer, right? The CAD.
That would be in the mid 90s. It was still a battle, because at my place of work, it was still, gateway tracing, hand drafting, things like that. And I was pushing to use CAD because it was so fast and it was so easy. And there was a battle between the old and the new. CAD had a credibility issue at that point of time. People didn't believe that CAD would do whatever it was that we wanted to do. And even AutoCAD release 12, release 10, they were phenomenally more efficient than drawing by hand. So, of course, right after that point in time, I moved to the United States, where everything was in the process of shifting to CAD. Most of the earlier interviews I had, they would show me their model building table, and the model building table was, just everybody was just dumping their stuff on it. Nobody was building models anymore.
All right. Yeah, and I think that transition now is more from CAD to BIM, right?
Correct. And that is also a battle, because BIM also has a credibility issue. With CAD, look, you're in AutoCAD. 30 minutes into AutoCAD, you can produce a document.
Yeah.
You can use the line command, offset, dimensions, you're all set. It is really quick and easy. And 90% of the users, I would say, they don't go below the surface of AutoCAD. With BIM, however, since BIM is so smart, you have to know exactly what it is that you're doing. Once that learning curve has been overcome, then BIM becomes very intuitive, and it starts to tell you what it is that it wants. That is something that I have always found a challenge to convince people. With most people, their attitude is, oh, I could do it so much faster in AutoCAD. But you are drafting a plan in AutoCAD, then you have to visualize the elevation. You have to visualize the sections. Something can go wrong in the process. Some of the geometry may not be correctly interpreted. Whereas in BIM, you are working in Revit, rather. BIM is a little more of an overarching term. Whereas in Revit, you may see things in 2D, you may imagine things in 2D, but whatever you are creating is a virtual model of the entire building. And then you have your little camera and you walk around the building and you're taking pictures. That's what your elevations are. That's what your sections are. That's what your interior perspective views are. And that is something that has always been a challenge for me to get across.
Yeah, and now, and the best part about BIM is, you need to invest more time, but it pays off in the long run, especially for facilities management and all that, right?
Yes, it does. For instance, let's say you've got a table. You need to put furniture into your model. You've got a table. You have maybe 3 sizes of table. Rather than drawing 3 different tables, creating 3 blocks for the 3 sizes of table, I can create a table family which has all three sizes in it as types. And I can use that same family and I can generate 100 different types of tables out of that. Now, what that means is that involves a little bit of work right at the beginning.
Yep.
But for the user, so as the BIM manager, that's my job. I go in, I create families, I make them intuitive, I make them smart. And then I give them to the user. And I tell them, put it into your project, tell me how it works. And that's how the process starts of creating a tool that is very intuitive, it's very smart, and it's very efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you transition to a BIM manager? Like, it took you pretty long, right?
Yes, it did. Proceeding from academia, because in academia, you're there and you're exposed to everything. You're exposed to the cutting edge of technology, and you've got students who come in who want to learn technology. So it starts off as a race, staying 2 steps ahead of the students. And then as you go on with teaching class after class, then things start to come a lot more easy to you. So I had been teaching at Purdue University for some time, and when the opportunity at a local firm came up for a BIM specialist, I applied. And I was really, really surprised when they called me back, because they felt that as a BIM specialist, I would be of more value than just coordinating BIM standards and creating families, creating BIM tools. The vision at that time was to bring in somebody with training and communication experience.
Right.
That's what I had.
Right.
I had the training and communication experience. And this has been a common thread for me, because after that I have been BIM specialist / BIM manager at another couple of local firms, culminating now with my position in Fishbeck. And this is still a part of my work content, where I have to communicate with the team and I have to teach them about the tools that I have created. I've created a family. I need to let the team know how to use this family, how to get the best out of it, and how to prevent it from breaking. I have to teach them best practices on how to make the projects as efficient as possible. So what I brought to the table was a lot more than somebody who had spent years and years in industry would have brought.
All right. But how did you pick up on those skills, considering the fact that there was not too many resources or tutorials out there back then, right?
You know what, Manish, where there's a will, there's a way.
All right.
So a lot of times it would be in response to something from a team member. A team member calls me up and says, can you create a smart tag for me that will calculate the maximum egress through a door? A phenomenal resource that I discovered and that I used were the Autodesk Revit forums. I got onto the Revit forums. I started asking questions. I got some great guidance. There are so many mentors out there who know so much and who are so helpful. They're so willing to share their knowledge. And as time went on, I suddenly discovered that I was giving answers.
Yeah, I thought you work for Autodesk when I saw some of your answers on the forums.
Well, thank you. That's an honor. That's really an honor. So as time went on, I discovered I was giving answers. I was giving a lot of answers. And then suddenly it came about that I at AU, I had people stop me in the hallways. You're so good. Why aren't you an expert elite?
Yeah.
And suddenly, I was nominated for expert elite and I got it. And after that, there was no looking back. I went on to present at AU.
Wow.
I'm involved with directly. It's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal group of people in the expert elite community, because you're there and I learn something from them every single day. Every conversation I have with one of my colleagues, I learn something new. And if I'm able to help them, it's an honor. It's a complete honor.
Awesome. And I think you must have met a lot of people and networked as well, right?
Yes. That's a part of it, especially when you're at AU. It's such an opportunity. There are people from different companies and They do a variety of work. They accomplish a variety of things. And just by asking questions, casual conversations, asking questions, you learn so much. And for me, that's really important. If I don't every day, then it's not a good day for me.
So you're also constantly learning even now, every day.
Absolutely. Even when I talk to people at work, even when, I'm doing something like developing a new family, for instance, I am still learning something new.
Are you also, because generally when you get into BIM, there's so many avenues which you can get into, which is automation, coding. So are you also picking up on those skills?
With my specialty is usage of the software, family development, and project troubleshooting, project corruption issues. Those are my specialties. My objective is to the team as far away from Autodesk as possible.
Right.
It's as far as possible. I try not to call Autodesk to resolve issues, and so far, in the past maybe 6 years, I've called on Autodesk maybe twice for an issue.
And considering the fact that you're a veteran, have you ever felt intimidated by the new guys who specialize so much in the software and coding?
Oh my goodness. Have you seen some of the stuff that is floating around? There are people who come up with this really, really complex geometry in Dynamo. I think Dynamo is the future. For me, I use Dynamo a lot for repetitive tasks, for project cleanup, for instance, troubleshooting. That's what I use Dynamo for. I have not used Dynamo yet as a generative tool. And I see people out there who come up with this wonderful, complex geometry. You can find them on LinkedIn. It is phenomenal. It is so very, very interesting. As far as creating geometry goes, though, I'm a little old school, kind of like my dear friend Alfredo Medina. Alfredo, he's all for developing families. He says, "Why do you need Dynamo when you can develop a family?" I'm kind of like that. But when I see some of the things that others are coming up with, it just boggles the mind.
Yeah, and it shows that you need to adapt to the technology as in when you work as an architect or progress in your career as an architect, right?
Very true. And at my end, it would be recognizing a design opportunity. Let's say, we're in a project and we've got this incredibly complex geometry that needs to be modeled. It would be my responsibility to recognize that as an opportunity, advise the team so, and possibly develop a Dynamo script to create the geometry, or find somebody who can develop that Dynamo script for us. And frankly, where I am, finding somebody would be the most efficient solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And you spoke about the various scope as a BIM manager, but do you feel that BIM manager, every firm has different scope of work and the different way of working?
Very true. Everybody has their own style, and every firm has their own conventions. They have their own standards that need to be complied to. It also depends upon the content of the firm that you're working with. A previous job, the firm specialized in movie theaters. So that is a completely different ballgame.
Yeah.
Developing families had to be very sensitive to things like sightline issues, ADA, spacing, things like that. I mean, developing seat families for projects like that was a real challenge for me. Making sure that they were graphically correct in the plan, they represented the sightline issues, they look graphically correct on the sheet. That was a real challenge. Other firms where I have worked, even currently, life safety planning is absolutely huge. Now, coming up with a tool that would allow the team member who is creating the life safety plan, coming up with a tool that does that really quickly, calculates egress, calculates occupancy for you, calculates travel distance, all of that is absolutely huge. Now, I do understand that Revit 2020 has started off with their path of travel tool. It's a great tool. It's an absolutely great tool. But my current firm, we are still working in 2019. We plan to transition directly to 2021. So for the current projects, I have thrown together a tool, and the team members, they think it's pretty slick. So it all depends upon the firm. Previous firms I worked at, they were already in 2020. So the tools that I was providing them were very different from what I am providing now in my current job situation.
All right. And do BIM managers also design apart from the technical stuff?
That is something that I feel very, very, very strongly about. If you just stay in the ivory tower of BIM, you're just there, you are troubleshooting, you are creating tools, you are mentoring team members, you are kind of out of touch with how it is that the firm does things.
Yeah.
Now, let's say if I've been working at a firm for 10 years and all of a sudden I decide to transition over to be a BIM manager. I'm in a good place because I know exactly how it is that the firm does things. But, for instance, if I have moved over from another firm and I start as a BIM manager, I know how the other firms did their work, but I don't know how this firm does their work, which is why a part of my job description is to be involved in document production. If I'm in document production, I take what I know and I'm able to plug it in to what it is that the firm needs. And I can take my knowledge and do it their way. And that helps me to be a lot more efficient. So yes, there does need to be a certain proportion of your work content that is involved with production. I would say maybe a 75-25 split. 75% BIM management, 25% production. And that could be flexible because there are times when work is slow, construction is slow. And in that case, I would spend more time on standards and families.
All right. So yeah, you were talking about BIM manager. It sounds like there's a lot of work being a BIM manager. So could you tell us about the importance of delegation and not getting bogged down with a lot of work pressure?
That's really, really important because my time is valuable. I would need to look at what needs to be done and farm it out to other team members. So it's kind of a balancing act. Let's say that there are team members who are still in the learning process, let us say. They need training, they need practice rather. We don't have enough to load them. Then in that case, I would need to step in, look at what needs to be done, match it with their abilities. And then delegate work to them. So things like simpler families, for instance. I would rather devote my time to something that is more complex, maybe to designing the template, maybe to creating view templates, standardizing stuff. My time would be better spent with that than in, let us say, creating a casework family. So in that case, I would farm out work to other members of the team. I would watch over their shoulder, be available as a resource. Once their job is done, I would definitely need to go in, vet the product and make sure that it is up to standard. Maybe I would add in a few enhancements in order to make the product better. And I feel that would be the best utilization of my time.
Right. So it's also you working and a lot of others working at the same time.
Very true. Very true. Cannot really. There's no I in team, right?
Yeah.
We all have to work together. We all have to communicate a lot, and so we have periodic meetings. We have periodic brainstorming sessions. We've got something called a brown bag lunch.
Nice.
Everybody gets together and we talk about what we're doing, what needs to be done, what we used to do in previous jobs. Just compare notes, and we try to learn from each other. And that's really, really important. Nobody knows everything, You can always learn something from somebody else.
And you guys are, of course, working on the cloud using various platforms like BIM 360 or Imagine It.
Correct. Especially nowadays with COVID-19 going on, working on the cloud has become absolutely crucial. A part of my responsibility, as well as teamed up with certain key team members, was to take the projects, clean them up, upload them to BIM 360, just that was a learning exercise. It was very, very intense. It was a learning exercise. And but working on the cloud is again, it's the, it's there's something great about working on the cutting edge of technology. It's such an opportunity where you can collaborate with so many other agencies. They may not even be a part of the Fishbeck family, and you're out there and you're collaborating with so many other consultants in real time. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you ever imagine yourself like 20, 30 years back that you would transition from being drafting to CAD and now working in the cloud?
Believe it or not, no, I did not. But maybe it's just me, but I find something so fascinating about technology. I look at stuff and I think, man, I want to do that too. And as time has gone on, I've been able to do stuff like that I wanted to do.
Awesome. And could you also briefly tell us about the type of projects that you work on? But it sounded like more of the interior design projects.
Not really. Of course, interior design projects are fun. I do not do them. I collaborate with the interiors team because they have their own specific requirements. They smart tags. Sometimes they need dumb tags. Sometimes they need furniture. They need special furniture families. Maybe they have a manufacturer's family that they need. The interiors team, they've got this totally fascinating requirement of what they need, the kind of help that they need from me. Over the past few years, my involvement has been mainly with commercial projects, some retail, some higher ed projects, and recently I was contributing to a series of family entertainment center projects. It's just amazing, just the scope of work, depending upon the requirement of the project, depending upon the function of the project, how different things and how different the requirements for the project can be. It's fascinating.
And since you worked in India as well, what are the major differences that you found working in India and then going on to work in the States?
Architecture is architecture. I think it's mainly the materials, the building materials, the building technology that I found different. In India, it was all about the 10-inch brick walls, right?
Yeah.
And the cast in place concrete. You've got, I still remember the days. Maybe things have changed because I left India a long time ago. But I remember the days when, you would have laborers carrying baskets of concrete mix on their head and pouring it into the formwork. Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, it's still the same pretty much in most places.
Oh, really? Okay. And then I come to the United States and I see that everything is stick built, built on 2x4 lumber, built on 2x6s maybe. And I used to look at the framework of those buildings and think, how do they stand? It was quite a culture shock. Of course, now that's all I do. That's all that I deal with now. But that was definitely a culture shock. Other things that I found different, the amount of regulation, the amount of legislation that is involved in the building industry. You've got code, you have got ADA. ADA is absolutely huge. It makes such a difference to design. Everything has to be calculated in order to comply with ADA. Life safety plans are also a part of ADA. And where I come in, there would be things like designing families, creating signage, creating, just the simple ADA symbol, the ADA symbol of the person in the wheelchair in the circle. Just that can be made smart. I can take it, I can make it rotatable so that the team member takes the symbol, inserts it in a plan view. They don't have to manually rotate the symbol depending upon the orientation of the toilet room. They can use a rotation parameter and rotate it. Other things that I have liked to do would be just to take everything, nest all the other families. You've got the grab bars, you've got the clearances, the fixtures. nest them together into a family. That makes things so much easier for the team. They just take that the host family with the nested families in it, slap it into place, and they're all done. So legislation and regulation is a very, very key difference, a very major difference in what designing was in between India and the United States.
Yeah, and I think in certain states, the cost you're going to spend on procuring the documents sometimes exceeds the construction itself, right?
Every state has got their own requirements. For instance, when you design for a project in California, ADA compliance is absolutely huge. Then a part of our documentation is showing the parking layout, showing the number and the distance of accessible parking spots to the building. If we've got a ticket counter, then there has to be an ADA compliant part of the ticket counter as well. Just the spacing of railings, the width of ramps, for instance, that is entirely different. Whereas if we are designing something, let's say in Nevada, in the state of Nevada, then things are entirely different. They're not as stringent. So each state has got their own requirements. I mean, we've got the International Building Code. We've got the National Building Code, and then each state has got their own interpretation. Michigan has got their own interpretation of the building codes. California has got their own interpretation of the building codes. And not only that, depending upon the city that the project is being designed for, they would have their own requirements for documents that need to be submitted for permitting. So it is the job of the team, rather of the project manager, to make sure that they are absolutely aware of everything that is required. Otherwise, it gets really interesting. The project is done. Somebody has gone there with a punch list to make sure that all bases are covered, and suddenly it turns out that a ramp or a staircase or something is not compliant. They're opening next week, and the entire ramp has to be dismantled and recreated. It has happened. It actually did happen. And so that is why, especially firms, there are firms that only work, let's say, in the state of Michigan. But I've been fortunate to have been involved with firms that are creating projects all over the United States. And it's definitely a race to stay on top of code requirements, permitting requirements in different states and different municipalities, different counties, in order to make sure that there is as little reworking of the documents as possible.
All right. And in India, there is a lot of jugaad that happens as we try to adjust stuff.
It's been so long since I've heard that word.
But it doesn't really work in US, right? You need to stick by the rules and everything.
You have to play by the rules. No jugaad here.
All right. Could you briefly tell us about the licensing part in US? I think it's quite a journey to become an architect in the US, right?
It is. It is quite a journey. You come in, you enroll in, you are an associate AIA. You sign up with the AIA, you're an associate AIA. You go through a certain amount of experience. There's a certain number of hours that you have to log in. You have a designated mentor. You have a certain number of hours that you have to log in, and the hours are in different disciplines, so as to speak. Site, for instance, construction documents, so on and so forth. And after a certain period of time, I believe it's 3 to 5 years, you have to take examinations. It's multiple exams each stage, and as you clear each stage, you get closer and closer. Finally, you are AIA. Finally, you're a licensed architect. Licensure procedures are different for each state. So if you are licensed in the state of Michigan, you would not be licensed to practice in the state of California. So it's important for firms. Firms really look out for team members who are licensed in the states that they have their projects in. So that particular professional can go ahead and sign and seal the documents for that particular project.
Right. And Everyone has to give the same ARE exam, or is it different for every state?
Licensing requirements are different for different states.
Right. And it generally takes about 4 to 5 years, right?
Yes, it's definitely a process.
All right. And did you have like a full-blown party as soon as you got your license?
Oh, I'm not licensed.
Okay. All right.
I'm not licensed.
All right. Rina, could you briefly tell us about the journey to US? What made you were working in Coal India, right? In India?
Correct. I started my career at Mekon in Ranchi, and from there I transitioned to Coal India. Now, from there, my ambitions wanted me to get a master's in architecture,
Right.
and that led me to move to the United States. Once I moved to the United States, I got my master's. I found career opportunities. I just stayed here.
And you're definitely living the American dream right now.
Oh yes, I'm doing what I love.
Awesome.
It's the intellectual challenge, you know. I find something that challenges me, and I keep plugging away until I break the problem. It's a great feeling. It's a great high.
All right. And there's a lot of Indian architects and students who aspire to go and work in the US and study in the US. What advice would you give them, those who want to like come and settle down in the US?
The first thing to do is keep an open mind. Things are definitely different from India and the United States. Secondly, if you have the opportunity to gain software experience, please, please, please take those opportunities. The way that the industry is going, Revit skills are crucial. Most firms will not look at you if you do not have Revit skills. AutoCAD skills are good. There is some involvement with AutoCAD in the general workflow, but Revit is king nowadays. If you can learn, if you can perfect your skills, embrace every single resource that you can to do so. If you're a student, there are student licenses that you can get from Autodesk. It's a 3-year license, and it self-destructs in 3 years. Take that. It's an awesome opportunity. You can also get help through the Revit forums. I found the Revit forums to be an amazing, amazing resource. Look on LinkedIn. There are so many of us who are out there and posting, sharing our knowledge, sharing our insights. It's a very, very open community. The BIM community is very open. We don't just, take our secrets and sit on them, hey, this is my secret and I'm not going to share it because that makes me special. Nobody thinks that way. All of us are out there, and we are willing and able and happy to solve your problems, give you advice, give you insights. It's a tremendous resource. Tap into it. If nothing else, even if you are unable or unwilling or unsuccessful at making the transition to move over to the States, you'll have learned something.
Awesome. All right. Let's talk about a bit of BIM, the BIM scenario in the US. I think you guys pioneered definitely BIM, and then now it's sort of changing to Europe, right? So what's the BIM scenario right now in US?
I'm not too sure there's much of a difference between the BIM scenario in the United States and in Europe. For instance, there's a Revit certification exam, and that was actually designed by experts from all over the world. I mean, the final panel that created the exam was 2 experts from the United States and 2 from the United Kingdom. I was one of the representatives from the United States, and
nice.
The objective was to make sure that the exam is sensitive to differences between the United States and Europe. So at the very least, a metric version of the exam was on the books. So I really don't think that there is much of a difference in the attitudes and the knowledge base regarding BIM between the United States and Europe. The major differences would be in their context, in the geographic location, where they're building, the type of projects that they want, socioeconomic. I think that those would be the distinctions between these 2 parts of the world.
All right. And I recently watched a video on the US infrastructure, and it's not really picking up, right? So do you feel that BIM could help in any way?
One of the major achievements of BIM, and when I talk about BIM, I mean the entire Autodesk Construction Cloud, has been to save time. It's been This has been something that Autodesk has been particularly proud of. The fact that tools like BIM 360, for instance, PlanGrid, they are saving companies so very much time, and just that makes for a more efficient, a more productive workforce.
Yeah, so since you're from India and India is always a bit behind, do you feel that you would come back and set up shop and be a part of the BIM change in India?
That's a really good question. And given the right opportunity, that may actually be an option. However, what makes it really difficult is that I've got family in the United States now. Um, but given the cloud and the value of working remotely, working from a distance, even teaching from a distance, I think that geographically relocating is no longer an issue.
Yeah.
And, even from across the Atlantic, I'd be happy to step in, contribute, help out, mentor. I think that would be an absolutely great opportunity.
All right, awesome. And talking about mentoring, how have you maybe been part of workshops or communities that encourage BIM or embrace BIM technology?
One of the things that I have found very, very hard to let go of has been my attachment to the classroom. I've been teaching for a very, very long time. I'm still teaching, as a matter of fact.
All right.
I leave work early and run off to the classroom. It's just something that I cannot get myself out of. And that is that's something that is still very, very, very important to me. So I still teach a couple of classes at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. In addition to that, I am on the advisory board of the local technical education board. It's called KCTC, Kent County Technical Centers, and I'm currently the chair of their advisory board. And I go in, I'm a jury member to evaluate student projects. I mentor, I talk to students. I just tell them, hey, I'm here. I've got all of this information. I would have killed to have somebody come in when I was a student and bring this wealth of knowledge that could help me to get started. So just something like that can be really, really important. In addition to that, going to AU, helping out at the Revit forums, even if I can answer a question a day, I've helped somebody out.
Awesome.
And that is very, very important to me. Nowadays on LinkedIn, I have started periodically posting every week or a couple of times a week. I started posting Revitisms.
All right.
And now, the posts have started to pick up. They started to pick up recognition. And I've actually started to get responses. Hey, this is something that I can do. I think this is going to help me. That means a lot. If I was able to take whatever I had done during the day, because that's where the Revitisms come from. I do something during the day at my job. It makes me think, and I just put it down on print and send it out. If something like that can be helpful to somebody, why not? That's made my day. So it's all a part of, I learn, and then I like to try to help people also learn and be more successful and be more appreciative of the great technology that we have the opportunity to work with.
Yeah, awesome. And considering the present situation, do you feel that there would be a larger transition to the online world and e-learning taking the stage more than just the classroom?
This is perfect timing for that question, Manish.
Yeah.
Last night, since the college is closed down because of COVID, last night was my very first online session with my class. It's an architectural print reading class.
Oh,
now,
awesome.
Print reading, that means that, you've got those big elephant-sized sheets and you're opening out prints and you're talking to the students about them. Last night's session was completely online. I screen shared. My students logged into the Skype session. I screen shared. They were able to see my presentation. They were able to see the sheets that I was presenting. They were able to hear. They were able to talk back to me, ask questions, get clarifications. It was just like being in the classroom, except for that we were not in the classroom. Advantages to that. Even students who did not have a laptop, they were able to get onto the session using their phone, using their iPad, tablet. It makes for so much of flexibility.
Yeah.
So yes, going online is definitely an option. And there are times when it's not convenient, it's not safe. For instance, I mean, there's so much that can go wrong during the day, but class doesn't need to stop.
Yeah.
So I think that this is really, really important. In the workplace, for instance, my teammates and I, we are in constant communication throughout the day. We're talking to each other throughout the day. A lot of it is Microsoft Teams, a lot of it is Skype for Business, and we stay in touch. We even had staff meetings
So you're presently working
Skype.
from home, right?
Yes. Currently, due to COVID, we are all working from home. What I do miss, however, is the human element. And that's what I feel that would still make the office the more important venue to conduct business. Because here you are, you're at home, you're isolated, admitted, you're there, you've got your cup of tea, you've got your puppy to cuddle, but you do miss the human element of being able to, just step over, talk to somebody, get actual FaceTime, get voice time with somebody, and have actual communication, maybe share a laugh, be more spontaneous, things like that. But learning remotely is a definite option now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that in the future, companies would definitely consider the hybrid of, having to work together and also having to work remotely once in a while.
Very true. Very true. And I'm sure that there's a happy blend for that. I'm sure that somebody is going to come up with a good mix of the amount of time that you'd need to spend, split between office and working remotely.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. My last question to you is, where do you see the future of BIM, considering the fact that you transitioned so much in 40 years? Where do you see our AEC industry headed?
Right now, the big buzzword is generative design. Autodesk has started their beta project refinery, and they are experimenting with throwing, a few ingredients in the pot and coming up with multiple combinations. So last year at AU, there were a couple of very, very interesting presentations on that, and I would be very, very interested to see where that goes. Especially, when you are in commercial, when you are in, it could be retail commercial, it could be public buildings. Standardization is key. And just being able to create a standard module, maybe 2 or 3 standard modules, and feed that into the generative design software and have the generative design software come up with various combinations of the modules. That gives you so many options, so much more flexibility. When you have more options, you are able to make better choices. Maybe you're able to make better tweaks and better modifications, and that's going to save us so much time and make us so much more efficient, so much more profitable.
But we're definitely not going to get replaced, right?
The people are going to change. The people are going to be more knowledgeable about the software. They're going to be more in tune with the software. They're going to be able to communicate to the software, understand what the software wants, and tell the software exactly what it is that needs to be done in a manner that the software understands. So the people are going to be there, but they're going to be different. They're going to have a different knowledge base and a different skill set.
All right. Awesome. All right. So we quickly jump into the quickfire round and then I'll let you go.
There's a quickfire round? This sounds like coffee with Karan.
All right. Which book has inspired you the most?
Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
I found it very difficult to read through that book.
My favorite book.
All right. What do you generally listen to?
Bollywood music.
All right. So which one's been your favorite music? Artist or any song?
Anything that is danceable, like Bhangra music, Garba music, you name it. It just has to be Dhoom Dharake wala music.
All right, awesome. Do you also listen to music while working?
No, for me, music while working is a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
It's very surprising. I mean, I see people with headphones on all the time, and I think it's just a distraction.
All right. What would you have chosen had you not taken up architecture? Probably journalism.
Journalism.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I love to write. I love to, just putting my words down on paper. It's fantastic.
All right. Which city would you consider your favorite?
Chandigarh.
Yeah.
Home is always home.
And do you do visit Chandigarh like every year or so?
Actually, no. I have not been back to India ever since 1998.
Oh, wow.
Plan
Okay.
manaenge.
Was there any mentor in your life or someone who has inspired you?
There are I would consider maybe at least two mentors
Mm-hmm.
let's make it three. In the College of Architecture, our principal,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. S.S. Bhatti, he was one of the members of Corbu's original Chandigarh team.
Oh, wow.
He was a definite inspiration, a definite mentor. For some reason, he understood me.
Mm-hmm.
He understood that, I'm not all fun and games and goofy. He recognized the serious side of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely owe him a debt of gratitude. The next mentor that I would count would be Mr. BV Doshi.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
I especially remember this was a long time ago, a very long time ago. You don't want to know how long ago it was. But on the last day of my internship at Sangat, the exit interview that I had with him, I remember every single minute of that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just so encouraging, and he just lit up, with some of the feedback that I gave him about my internship experiences. He just lit up. It was absolutely wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
In the United States, there are many mentors. I would say that most of out of the expert elite community, there are people whom I interact with every single day. It's kind of like, hey, I ran into a problem. What do I do? And those guys are my mentors. We've got Matt Wunsch, we've got Dave Butts, we've got Mike Davis. These guys, they are old friends, they're dear friends, they are mentors, they mentor me all the time. But above all, the most important mentor to me in my journey towards BIM has been a gentleman called Tone Gwen.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in California, and the amount I have learned from him, oh my God. He is an expert. He's one of the few experts who's rated as a 13. I'm an 11. And Tone is a 13, and the amount I have learned from him has been absolutely, absolutely phenomenal. So, hey, where would I be without encouragement, without input, without knowledge, and that's where all of these mentors have stepped in. It's been quite a journey, and I owe these guys a debt of gratitude.
Awesome, Rina. And what does a daily routine in your life look like? Now, of course, is at home, but then back when you're in office.
Oh, I actually miss the office days because, going to office gives you structure. Get up, spend some time on the Directly website, do some troubleshooting, feed the dog, let the dog out, and go to work. Now, at work, given the nature of my job, because I'm flying by the seat of my pants most of the time, it can change. I could be working on something, and then suddenly that gets a lower priority, something comes up with a higher priority, or there's a team that's in trouble. If there's a team that's in trouble, then that suddenly becomes my first priority, because we cannot have a team that's dead in the water.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be brought back on task as soon as possible. It's adventurous. It gets really, really exciting at times. And that prevents me from getting bored. I stay alert. I stay awake. I stay interested. So it's kind of nice. In the evening, there are some days when I have to drive over to teach my class, but I come back home, I chill. Come back home, maybe watch a Bollywood movie. Some things never change. Or I drive over to my daughter's home, spend time with her and her family. No, I don't think I really have a routine. Leaving aside getting to work at 8 o'clock and coming back at 5, and it may not even be 5 o'clock, it could be later than 5. I don't really think I have a routine.
All right. But the work culture in the US is pretty comfortable, right?
It is. As long as you get your job done. That is what they look at. Get your job done, stay on schedule, be honest, be open, be helpful, be cooperative, be willing to learn. The most important thing that employers look at in the United States is a willingness to learn.
All right.
So having somebody who says, this is not how I've done things, I've always done things differently, I don't want to do things your way, that is not encouraged. That is kind of frowned upon.
All right. And where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
10 years from now, I see myself up to speed with whatever iteration the technology has achieved at that time. 5 years ago, my technology skills were entirely different. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I confidently expect that my knowledge base and my technology skills are going to be entirely different. I fully intend to move with the times.
All right. And my last question to you is, what advice would you give to young architects and architecture students just getting started?
Just getting started. One of the things that I would like to stress again is pick up all the software skills that you have. Get that Autodesk student license. Get yourself a license for Revit, for AutoCAD, maybe 3ds Max even. And learn those. Take all the help from the Revit forums, that from the Autodesk forums that you can. Learn whatever you can. Now at school, take all the classes in CAD that you can. And finally, just keep an open mind. Never stop learning. Never ever stop learning. If you can get an internship while you're at school, please do so, because there is a basic disconnect between school and the workplace. If you've got part-time professors who come in, they have full-time jobs, but they come in to teach part-time. Grab one of them. Try to get an internship with a professor who is actually working in practice, and that would be absolutely huge in terms of keeping your learning at school in tune with what is required at the workplace. Because let's face it, your final objective is going to be the workplace.
Yeah. Awesome, Rina. I think that was some great advice. Lots to learn from this episode. Thanks for coming on to the Aakyan podcast. What's the best way our listeners could get in touch with you in case they want to reach out?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best way to get in touch with me. I think you should be able to find me on LinkedIn. But hey, this has been a great conversation, and you made me think and revisit a lot of things that have been important in my life. Thank you for this opportunity. I love being here.
You've been listening to the Aakyan Podcast. We're still building the community. Please share this knowledge with someone you know who could benefit. Just send them to aakyan.com, where you'll find our free newsletter, and for more podcast episodes, search for the show on any major podcasting platform. Don't forget to subscribe where you're listening right now. And if you liked it, leave a rating or review.